the field of view a metric scale. Each line is 1 millimeter in division. So we see that this specimen is 1, 2, 3, 4 millimeters across and about the equivalent size in the other dimension. Let us go now to a higher magnification and observe what this specimen looks like. Using now a 4x objective giving around 50 some odd diameters magnification, we can see the marks of the Vickers indentation showing a typical example of a metal. These markings were made in Zurich, Switzerland, and you can see the swell marks of the material as it is being pushed out by the diamond indenter. The surface was not highly polished, so one has now the marking of the polishing equipment. There are still occlusions in the material. In the specimen I examined previously, one would get a combination of crystalline deposits and metals. This one now is more completely metal. This is the next stage after the previous one, number 6. And one can see now a much more precise evidence of a metal. We'll rotate the Wallenstein prism to bring out again. Here are structures. These are structures now that would not be seen normally except with the skill of this type of development. These are areas of higher reflectivity. These are structures that are present here. One is seeing this by shifting a prism. I'm going to do it again. There it is. These bear investigation. There are things beyond that which are just looked at with ordinary light. Here we can see with the power of a television camera. This is the information that we should be looking at. Okay, we'll move on. This specimen was taken the first late summer last year, 1977 specimen of the metal from the spacecraft. This apparently was the one that disintegrated, and now we'll look at it. This is polarized light at higher magnification. The exciting thing about this specimen is you can see the various discrete agglomerates of metal, 2 distinct states, one here and another one in the more uniform polished background. These materials yet are not fused together, and one can see them even more critically by rotating the Nomarski Wallenstein prism. Here's the edge of the specimen where it is molded in. One sees 2 distinct materials. Now we will go to polarized light to see if these materials are birefringent. Now under polarized light, one sees the distinct birefringent bits of material that are present against a matrix which is non-birefringent. I'll remove the analyzer. One can see this, and when one brings the analyzer in, one can see this, and has the polars crossed, one gets a birefringent area. One one can be totally misled if one did an analysis of this in a gross way. One has to analyze now each of these areas. We see here the distinct birefringent areas with the polars crossed. Now I'll pull the analyzer out. One can see them, but much more distinctly that there is a birefringent area. This is number 1 sample, and as we go from 1, 4, 5, and 6, one sees a progression of diffusion of this birefringent material into the non-birefringent area. We must now analyze this material in this number 1 sample and move in the step-by-step evolution of this material into the final form that they have. It is very interesting to follow this, and one has to work now at this microscopic level. We are here now at about 160 diameters. These particles are very small, and one must deal with this on a microscopic basis. This is the end of the section now on the metals and metal samples that were given to me for examination. I was going to share these results with one of the people from NASA, Ames Research Center, a Dr. Richard F. Haynes. Mm-hmm. I put the specimen away in this plastic envelope, which I have here, and when I took the envelope out of my pocket and went to share it with him, the specimen was no longer present. It had disappeared. I retraced my steps, checked with Dr. Wee, my wife, everything. I had 2 of the specimens fitted together this way. There were 3 of them all together in my pocket. And at this time, I no longer had any additional this specimen.
Before we go to the another specimen, what is your opinion about the disappeared metal, or materials?
Whatever it is.
Is it normal? Normally, is it exist well on the Earth, on our world, or?
I've had this happen before to me, and when I've worked with crystals like this.
Yes.
I'd work with a crystal, study it, as I have over the last 10 years, and suddenly the next day I won't go to reach for it and it will be gone. It will have disappeared. I first accused myself of being negligent and not paying attention. And finally I just put it aside. I said, if it happens, it happens. I won't let it bother me. I don't know how to explain it. I have no way of giving any rational explanation. And at this moment, I must categorize it as a mystery.
I see. And what is your result of
of this here?
Of this material?
Right now,
yes.
I could not explain the type of material that I have and its discreteness by any known combination of materials. I could not put it together myself as a scientist. To get a combination of thorium, silver, and silicon in discrete areas. Yes, if I were to melt it together, I would see the evidence of all of it. But their discreteness is what intrigues me. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because you see, if I were to take these combinations and put it into a furnace, melt it, then pour it out and pull a little ingot, I would see all of these elements present there in any one area. But I don't. I see this discrete bits of material. Now, it can only happen by some form of a cold fusion process where you have the elements present and you fuse them together so they still maintain their identity, but they interpenetrate into one another.
So in other words, do you think there is a possibility to find naturally on this Earth, we can
Something like
find?
I'm going to look. I'm intrigued now. This is the type of thing I enjoy doing and dealing with, but
It's also a challenge because I showed it to one of my friends who was a metallurgist, and he shook his head. He said, I don't see how it can be put together. And that's the way we are right now. And I think it's important that those of us who are in the scientific world sit down and do some serious study on these things instead of putting it off as figments of people's imagination. I respect Mr. Stevens and the people I have met. I respect their integrity. I'm doing this with no attempt, no desire for any form of remuneration. I want to know, I want to see. And that's the only reason that I'm digging into it. But if it's be a business or as part of a corporation, I'm doing this independent of IBM.
So in another word, could I say this material is extraterrestrial?
It doesn't look like anything that we've made here. At this moment, I would feel very much inclined to accept what was given to me as being true.
I see. So as a result of your whole experiment, what is your opinion about those materials?
I think we must start working on a dedicated basis to look at these things and find out why we are given these grouping of specimens. I respect the people I have met so far, their integrity, their willingness to work. Mr. De La Tosa in his work on photography, and Mr. Stevens, the way he has done his best to give me specimens. We have all done this for one thing, to serve and to find out what truth there is to this. I understand you have visited the individual, Mr. Myers, who has been given these specimens. What is your feeling about him?
Well, he's an honest man, and you know, he's living a very simple way.
It formed an orange-red deposit, and I was watching that and photographing it simultaneously.
I asked Dr. Vogel if he thought Billy Meyer could be trying to fool him.
He was giving me a sample which contained chromium would have been absolutely out of the ordinary, because the metal chromium is a rare earth metal, and you would have to be really knowledgeable in chemistry to get this. If you want to build a sample, you know, from a standpoint of taking, you wouldn't have that type of knowledge. We've got about 6 scientists now, one from SRI, another one from Ames Research Laboratory. There are 2 from Ames, and one is from GE, the atomic energy area. There are 2 from IBM. And we formed a group. There's about 7 of us. We meet now every 2 weeks, and we're digging into this with all of our skills. And we're doing it.